Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Excuse me while I take a drink. Let's pray. Lord, thanks for our time together today. Pray you'll bless it. Use this to inform us and bless our hearts with this. And always remember that we're not to be given over to a spirit of fear, but of confidence and power that we have through the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for the time that we have to gather together today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, first hour, I did the sermon. It's on Life of Messiah. What did I title that thing? Oh, the Messiah's pre-existence. Couldn't even remember the title. How am I supposed to expect you to remember anything? Today we're going to talk about starting to fall. And I will say I spent most of my time on the sermon first hour. Today, I have been running around trying to put together some things. I have a few ideas that I want to talk about. There's some things that are very troubling. I'll be here next Sunday doing a prophecy update and then gone to Israel for a couple Sundays. We'll try to do some things and put some things up while I'm over there as I have time. But I'm not sure because I'm not sure exactly where I'll be and how good the Wi-Fi will be or the internet speeds will be where I'm at, but I'll be meeting with some people. We're going to some amazing sites. And so we'll try to update you on that. So today we're going to talk about starting to fall. I want to give you a little bit of an update on a couple of items. First of all, Wednesday night, 7 p.m., will be the next Prophecy Roundtable on technocracy, transhumanism, AI, Mark of the Beast, that MOTB means Mark of the Beast, technology, tech intrusion. Have Britt Gillette, Scott Townsend, Patrick Wood, and Pete Garcia joining me, as far as I know. There's a lot going on in that space. I don't know if I have time to go into it today. We will talk about Peter Thiel, who is currently doing a series on the Antichrist and end times. He's one of the tech bros, multi-billionaire, probably worth $24 billion. And he essentially came out this week and said, look, anyone who opposes technology development is the Antichrist, will be the Antichrist, or is in an Antichrist spirit. And what you're seeing is in the world today is it seems like everything's being inverted. Good is bad, bad is good. I mean, what the Bible says is true. Last week I did talk at the Hope for Our Times conference in Texas. My talk was, I thought, we're supposed to be culturally sensitive, right? To our audience. So it was in Texas, so I called it Prophecy Roundup, Talking Turkey in Texas. And the only thing I couldn't figure out how to do is how to put smoking in there. I would have done smoking. And they do have great barbecue in Texas. And the people were amazing. The food was great. And we had a great time talking. I'll also be back in Israel for a media summit in early November. And this is sort of my wheel of prophecy. And if I could spin this thing, it'd be spinning like a 78 RPM record. Now, a lot of people are going to go, what's a 78 RPM record? And ask Wes. He knows what those are. He probably has some in his library at his house. So I've updated some of my chess pieces. I'll just go left to right so you know what they represent. Israel left, U.S., United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Russia. Kind of cool, right? The Golden Dome. And what I do is I wrap the flag around them. And then we've got Iran, which is kind of broken right now. Hezbollah, Syria, which was a proxy of theirs, Houthis, and Hamas. And then, of course, we have Erdogan hugging his Qatar chess piece because he gets funded by Qatar. That's the Qatari flag, and then there's oil rig on top because that's how the Qataris get all their money. Then we have the new Syrian government, and then, of course, the Turkish check piece, and it goes over. you remember this one? I've updated this one a little bit. This is, a lot of people, when this cover came out, a lot of people in the prophecy community go, oh, Macron's the Antichrist, right? Remember that? And the response to that is, at least my response partly was, can't the devil do better? I mean, And he was in the news this week, may mention that or may not. And so this was my French chess piece, the French flag with the Eiffel Tower on top. And then guess what? French, the white flag. And so I thought I would update both the cover and the French chess piece. And so this is what it looks like now. And Macron is his little Napoleon sinking into the waves. So again, Prophecy Roundtable, Wednesday night at 7. We'll cover those things. And everything is just really moving along very, very fast. And so if I repeat myself, I apologize, but I was very, very busy this week, and I had to spend some time with good old, what's her name? Pam. No, I'm just kidding. It's very busy around our house. So I think I'm going to start off with a couple of speeches from the UN. I'm going to play a little bit longer talk. I'm not going to play Trump. I thought that you see what happened to President Trump at the UN. He and Melania were getting on the escalator stopped. Then he gets to the podium and the teleprompter doesn't work. Now that doesn't stop President Trump from talking, as you've probably gathered. I was joking with Pam the other day that I heard a report that Trump was actually going to start his second news conference since taking office back in January, that the first one was still going on. And because he just does seem to be, he does seem to talk a lot. That seems to be his modus operandi. So so Trump gave a speech. It was interesting. The New York Times, when they reported on the speech, they sort of mockingly said, Trump thinks I forget what the title of the editorial was. Trump thinks he has the world in his hands. But the big picture that they put up on their website, it was black and white in the newspaper, but you see that they took a picture of his hand to show that he's got a bad hand or there's something going on with his hand. And of course, we have to say that because we didn't do any of that with Joe Biden for 4 years. Now Trump, I mean, he's almost 80, so you would expect some of the things to start breaking down a little bit. He does seem to have a lot of energy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the speeches at the UN. This is Al-Quds newspaper. I think it's published in the UK, Al-Quds Al-Arabi, and you can imagine the orientation of it. And so what they did was kind of a summary on the front page of some of the important speeches that took place. We're going to look at King Abdullah II of Jordan, just because he speaks in English, the Emir of Qatar, Donald Trump, Antonio Guterres, Erdogan of Turkey, and Abdullah, the next to last one there, left to right, is King Abdullah II of Jordan. And everybody was focused on the two-state solution. We got to have a two-state solution. Israel's committing genocide. That was sort of the common theme. It's almost as if nothing else in the world is happening. Unfortunately, I see a lot of stuff from people on the woke right that are anti-Israel, extremely anti-Israel. One of my friends suggested that we should call them the third right, which I thought was a pretty good play on words. I think Benjamin Netanyahu picked up on that on a meeting with some Zionist, I guess you would call them Zionist influencers, pro-Israel influencers in New York yesterday. I'll talk a little bit about that. But of course, the Emir of Qatar, he was upset with Qatar. He was upset with Israel. Israel bombed Qatar. I actually met with a guy in Texas who was flying here lives in the Caucasus region, north of Turkey, not south of Russia. You can probably gather what countries he might be living in. And when he flew, he actually showed me his ticket. He connected through Doha. And he lands in Doha just after Israel has bombed the Hamas meeting in Doha. He said there's smoke in the air. You can see the plumes of smoke rising. just off the airport there. And these things change a lot. And so what happened after that bombing took place, I guess I didn't get to talk about this last week because I didn't do an update. So after that bombing took place, immediately the Arabs and Muslims have a big joint emergency meeting in Doha. Everybody gets together. Erdogan, all the Muslim leaders, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, everybody's there railing on Israel. We got to solve this Palestinian Gaza issue, and the only way to do that is a two-state solution to bring peace and security to everybody in the region. And it's one of these things, we live at this time where everybody is talking in Bible prophecy terms, even though they don't want to admit that Bible prophecy is really, they don't believe in Bible prophecy, but everybody's using the terms. I had a picture here. This is a real, usually it's a mess, okay? Today, I'm confessing that it's a mess. So that makes it okay, right? I guess I don't have the picture. But we've seen the Abraham Accord sign, right? From abrahamshield.org. And the picture is Trump and Netanyahu in the middle, surrounded by 10 kings or princes or leaders of governments, which is kind of an interesting number. Some people are drawing some conclusions from that. I'm not going to say that those people are way out in left field or anything like that. They're actually making some good points as this alliance comes together. But the one picture that I saw, when you translate the Hebrew, it says a time for war, a time for settlement. And then below it, it said, moving to a new Abrahamic covenant. And that's kind of interesting language that you're getting on these billboards that were appearing all over Israel. So the Qatari emir, he was upset. Before the big meeting started, they had a two-state solution meeting chaired by Emmanuel Macron of France and Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. Of course, Trump was there and spoke. And I will say he was in rare form. And those are my notebooks that are on the chair beside you, so you don't need to worry about those. And don't read them because it's informational research for me. Somebody brought to me. So, I mean, Trump was a barn burner. You people, you believe in this climate change. You're destroying the economies. You're weak. You don't know what you're doing. You need to get back to the good old oil and gas days because that's what's going to bring things about. And I think he used the example of Aberdeen, which is in Scotland, and to the east of Aberdeen is the North Sea, oil rich, and they're not really drilling there. They put up all these windmills, and the windmills don't work all the time. That's the problem with solar. That's the problem with windmills. And as we drove around the West, there are places where you see thousands of acres covered with these solar panels. So what do you gather from that? Well, one, if they got thousands of acres of solar panels, they can't grow anything there. And you don't eat solar panels, you eat food. But they have all these big data centers. We'll talk more about that. These data centers are just, they're growing like weeds grow in your lawn. I mean, they're all over the place. There's a place up in Indiana where they have a data center. They have, I think, 8 buildings so far. They have 22 more they're going to build, like some of the things out here in New Albany. And all these things take a lot of power and energy and water. It's really taxing resources here in the United States and other places around the world where they're building these. So Qatar was really upset when Israel had bombed Doha. I mean, so it's sort of like, well, we can give refuge to Hamas, but don't you dare say or do anything about it. It's, this is Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar. They support and fund the Muslim Brotherhood. They fund Al Jazeera. And Trump, of course, spoke. Antonio Guterres, you can imagine what he said. We need a two-state solution. Everybody, it's like this broken record that you hear. Abdullah, you'll hear him in just a minute. Erdogan said the same thing. What did nobody mention? Nobody, I'm pretty sure nobody anywhere in any speech at the UN mentioned the slaughter of Christians that is going on in front of us right now. Dozens of Christians killed almost every day in Nigeria and other places. Probably 100,000 in the last 15 years in Nigeria alone. Christians have been slaughtered, and I mean slaughtered. Thousands of churches have been burned and destroyed. And there's not a word of protest anywhere on the left, anywhere on college campuses or anywhere about actual slaughter that's been going on. Everything is focused on Israel and Gaza. And that's kind of prophetic in and of itself. So I'm going to do a little bit of Abdullah. I'll play a little bit of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Then we'll go and we'll talk about what I think is probably one of the more significant developments. And then if we have time, I'll do a couple of other things. So here we go. So here is, and if you want to translate the Arabic, you can go put that into Google Translate. This is kind of a summary of Erdogan's speech, talking about we got Israel's committing genocide. Israel's evil. Israel's bad. Never mentions what's happened in Syria. Never mentions what Turkey's done to Armenians, never mentions what Turkey has done to Kurds over the years. All of that is irrelevant. Let's focus on Israel. Because that place, somebody's, there we go, is going off. And so this was in the Jordanian newspaper. And of course, what did they choose for the big picture about the UN meetings? Was the vote that took place a couple of weeks ago that there should be a two-state solution in the Middle East. And it was 142 for, 10 against, and 12 abstentions. If you look at a current map of the world, there are maybe 10 or 12 countries that have not bought on to the two-state solution thing. I think Italy, a couple other countries in Europe, United States, some of the Pacific Islands, maybe a couple in old Eastern Europe. Everybody else, two-state solution, create a Palestinian state within Israel, everything will be solved. So I'm going to play Abdullah the second just because he's easier to understand. You don't have to listen to the interpreter try to interpret what he says. But I want you to listen carefully to some of these things. This might be 10 minutes long. I think it's important because Abdullah is effectively in control of the Temple Mount, at least in practice. So here we go, King Abdullah of Jordan.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Majesty King Abdullah II Ibn al-Hussein, King of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, Your Excellencies. Another year, another UN General Assembly, and another occasion when I stand before you to address the same issue, the conflict in the Middle East. And not for the first time, developments on the ground have made me question the worth and utility of words in capturing the magnitude of the crisis. Yet not speaking about it would signal acceptance of the situation and abandonment of our humanity. And that I will not do. Our UN General Assembly was born 80 years ago, pledging to learn from, not repeat, history. The world vowed never again. However, for almost as long, Palestinians have been living through a cruel cycle of yet again, bombed indiscriminately, yet again, killed, injured, and maimed yet again, displaced and dispossessed yet again, denied rights, dignity, their basic humanity yet again. So I must ask, how long? How long will it be before we find a resolution to this conflict, one that safeguards the rights of all sides and allows a level of normalcy in the lives of the families at its core? How long will it be before I stand before you and speak not of suffering and devastation in my region, but of prospect, prosperity, and potential? Sadly, this is not the only conflict in our world. And some may say that other wars are also devastating. But the Palestinian-Israeli conflict remains unique. It is the longest standing conflict in the world. An illegal occupation of a helpless population by a self-declared democratic nation, and a flagrant violation of repeated UN resolutions, international law, and human rights conventions. A failure that should have elicited outrage and action, especially from major democracies. Instead, it has been met with decades of inertia. My friends, the war in Gaza marks one of the darkest moments in this institution's history. But although it is today's horror, the injustice stretches back decades. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict has been on the UN agenda throughout its 8 decades of existence. How long will we be satisfied with condemnation after condemnation without concrete action?
Here's some questions for King. How long will you be satisfied keeping Palestinian Arabs in refugee camps in your country under your control between you, your father and grandfather for 80 years? You big hypocrite. The guy whose ideological predecessor, the Hajjman al-Husseini, worked with a guy in Europe, first name Adolf, to get rid of the Jewish problem. You're not even from there. You were imported from Saudi Arabia, your family, to take control of that. And you're not, you might have an elected parliament, but you're not a democracy. You're the ruler. I've done some unpacking, by the way, on King Abdullah. I believe that his family's investments will generate for him somewhere between $1 and $2 billion a year. Very, very wealthy. People live in, I've been in Jordan, they live in squalor, they still live in refugee camps. They live in refugee camps in Syria. They live in refugee camps in Lebanon, in Jordan. It's beyond my comprehension that people don't call them out on this, so I'll continue.
When it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, it seems that what unfolds in the halls of power is theory. The struggles and suffering on the ground is reality. For decades, we have seen several attempts to achieve a solution by interim agreements and temporary stopgaps, none that delivered on the end game. In fact, many would argue these processes served as a distraction, as Israel grabbed more land, expanded illegal settlements, demolished homes, and displaced entire neighborhoods. Muslim and Christian holy sites in Jerusalem have been vandalized and desecrated by those under government protection. And throughout all these years, Israeli families too.
By the way, that's a very common theme. I have speech after speech after speech of this guy, and he always talks about Christian and Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. He never mentions that other word except to say that they're destroying and desecrating these sites. It was the Muslims under the Mufti that he controls that went in and dug up the Temple Mount to destroy the evidence of Jewish presence at the Temple Mount. That's why they have the Temple Mount Sifting Project. So, anyway.
Not been able to live in true security because military action cannot bring the safety they need. Nowhere is that more evident than in Gaza. More than 60,000 Palestinians killed, 50,000 children injured or killed, miles of burnt out rubble. Neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, farms, even mosques and churches in ruins. Widespread starvation. And what we are seeing is only a glimpse, because never in our modern history has the lenses of international media been obstructed like this from capturing the reality on the ground. Almost 2 years in, and the cruelty of this military campaign continues unabated. Furthermore, the current Israeli government's provocative calls for a so-called Greater Israel can only be realized through the blatant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its neighbors. And there is nothing great about that. I can't help but wonder if a similar outrageous call were made by an Arab leader, would it be met with the same global apathy? The international community must stop entertaining the illusion that this government is a willing partner for peace. Far from it. Its actions on the ground are dismantling the very foundations on which peace could stand, and intentionally burying the very idea of a Palestinian state. It has shown how little it respects the sovereignty of other countries, as we have seen in flagrant violations in Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Tunisia, and most recently, Qatar.
Okay, I think I probably need to stop this for our blood pressure purposes, but listen, I heard a great radio program or saw a thread on Twitter. I can't remember where I see so much stuff anymore. I can't remember where I saw it. But it was a Jewish guy from Israel and a lady who claimed to be a Palestinian Arab, and she was complaining that my family was forced out of Nablus by the Israelis, by the Israeli government. And the Israeli guy goes, well, when did that happen? 1949. Okay, now what should trigger something in your head about that? There was a war of independence in 1948. In 1949, Nablus was controlled by his country, Jordan. That's when the people left, a lot of them. Yeah, some left beforehand, I'm not going to deny that. But historical facts are historical facts. Jordan controlled the areas known as the West Bank. I prefer the terms Judea and Samaria. I think they're much more accurate historically, biblically. But his country controlled that from 1948 to 1967. During that time, Jews could not go to the cave of the tomb of the patriarchs in Hebron, because Jordan didn't let them go to their second holiest site. They were not allowed to go to the Western Wall. In fact, if you're on my tour, I think we're in the process of adding something where there's a video. It's there in where the menorah is in the old city of Jerusalem. in that I love the Jewish quarter of the old city, maybe because it's newer. I don't know. And by the way, this is just an aside. When I go over there, I have Google Maps, and I say, okay, I need walking directions from here to downtown Jerusalem, and my map will say it's 3/4 of a mile, mostly flat. Okay. And I'm looking at a walkway that goes like up this with a bunch of stairs off and on in it. And I'm trying to think, what does mostly flat mean to those guys at Google? I mean, because it must mean that it's sort of smooth. You know, you don't have to climb a wall, but you have to walk uphill. So if you're ever in Israel, and the other thing, like when you're walking around the old city, you get onto the eastern side. In my Google Maps app, the last time I did this, kept saying, you're entering a foreign country. Do you want to enter a foreign country? I'm in Jerusalem. What foreign country? There is no foreign country there. And so even the people at Google Maps, and they think artificial intelligence is going to be that smart. There's some things that kind of undermine that. But anyway, so Abdullah refuses to ignore the historical facts. And if you go out of Jerusalem on Route 60 up towards Ramallah, you'll see that, talked about it many times, that steel skeleton structure. That was his father's palace that was being built in 1967 that stopped. It was being built, by the way, I believe they found some evidence of a palace that existed before that on that area. It was built by a guy named Saul, the first king of Israel. Why would Abdullah build on that important historical site? Because, not Abdullah, Hussein, who everybody thought, oh, he was so great, he has an American, well, his fourth wife was an American wife. And why would we worry about that? I mean, why would he build there? It's not a big deal. It's because he was trying to make a statement. I'm the king. I'm building on the site of your first king. I'm more important than your first king. We have taken you over. That's what was being said. Nobody says about that. So anyway, so Bibi Netanyahu came and he spoke at the UN. This is the Jordanian newspaper talking about some of the things that he's closed. By the way, there's an important crossing. There's a couple of them, border crossings between Israel and Jordan. There was a shooting and some of you have been across the Allenby Bridge. And by the way, when we talk about the Jordan River and the Allenby Bridge, you know, there are creeks that are more dramatic waterways between here and around Sunbury than the Jordan River is. It's just this, even now today, it's pretty much a trickle of water. And the Allenby Bridge is just sort of a 2-lane bridge over the river. But it's an important border crossing. But there was a shooting there this week. And so that border crossing, at least the last I heard, was still closed, but they're talking about opening it. Because some guys came across from Jordan, they shot and killed a couple Israeli soldiers, is my recollection. It's crazy. So he talked about, he said this, an independent state is not a reward for the Palestinians, but rather an indisputable right. Wrong. The war on Gaza is one of the darkest events in the history of the United Nations. For the last 80 years, this is what's the darkest thing in the history of the United Nations for the last 80 years. Calls for a greater Israel can only be achieved by violating country sovereignty. Oh, you mean like when you were imported from Saudi Arabia to take over the Hashemite kingdom? Because you lost Saudi Arabia. And by the way, your family was also given control of another country called Iraq. What about the sovereignty of that? It's a time for peace for the United Nations, and the United Nations must answer this call to translate it. The conflict has been on the UN agenda for 8 decades. Okay. 2 years later, the brutality of the aggression on Gaza continues unabated. Wait a minute. Why did Israel go into Gaza? Was there anything that prompted it? Are there any hostages? Did you mention the hostages, King Abdullah? Maddening. So Prime Minister Netanyahu came, play a little bit of, I want you to watch what happens at the beginning. of Netanyahu's speech.
The Assembly will continue its consideration of Agenda Item 8 entitled General Debate. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly. Please, order in the hall. Please, order in the hall.
What happened was almost 80-90%
Please,
of the
order in
country's
the hall.
left.
Please, order in the hall.
You can see it's pretty empty. But Prime Minister Netanyahu persisted. So here we go. We'll move forward. to
Last
that.
year, I stood at this podium and I showed this map. This map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis.
By the way, there's a QR code. You can find this. You can scan it on your phone. It will take you to a website that shows videos from Hamas that they uploaded from October 7th. But it's very disturbing. So, just don't do it without thinking about it ahead of time. But I don't know. I'm sure Abdullah has never seen these, but or if he did, he doesn't care. So here we go.
This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country, Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. You remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah. And believe me, they got the message. And thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above anything else that I could say to you or that we did in this past year, in this past decade, we devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missiles programs. So here's where things stand today. Half the Houthi leadership in Yemen, gone. Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone. Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone. The Assad regime in Syria, gone. Those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and its top atomic bomb scientists, well, they're gone too. Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion, that's from the Bible. This 12-day war will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. And you saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action. President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and we delivered on that promise. We removed an existential threat to Israel, and a mortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud that could have claimed millions and millions of lives. But, ladies and gentlemen, we must remain vigilant. We must remain absolutely clear-minded and vigilant. We must not allow Iran to rebuild its military nuclear capacities. Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium, these stockpiles must be eliminated. And tomorrow, UN Security Council sanctions on Iran must be snapped back. Thanks to the resolve of our people, the courage of our soldiers, and the bold decisions we took, Israel rebounded from its darkest day to deliver one of the most stunning military comebacks in history. But we're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th. But we remember, Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, well, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here? It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight and why we must win. It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters! And these monsters took more than 250 people hostage. And those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers and their grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages, but 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved.
Move forward in this a little bit.
Anti-Semitism dies hard. In fact, it doesn't die at all. It just keeps coming back with its libelous lies, refurbished, regurgitated over and over again. And I want to tell you something else. These anti-Semitic lies, they have consequences. In recent months, Jews have been assaulted in Canada, Austria, or rather Australia, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. Here in America, an elderly Holocaust survivor was burned to death in Colorado. And a beautiful young couple from the Israeli embassy in Washington was brutally gunned down right in front of the Holocaust Museum there. Thankfully, President Trump's administration is forcefully fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism, and every government here should follow its lead.
So I'll let you can go to YouTube and the UN website and you can listen to the whole speech. I would recommend you listen to the whole speech, listen to Trump, listen to all of Abdullah, listen to Erdogan, because I think these are all significant players in the times in which we live. So after the meeting, let me go this way first. I want to talk about a Gaza plan that's been introduced. Let's see. Let me do that first. So after the UN meetings, Trump had meetings with the Muslim, Arab and Muslim leaders to talk about a Gaza plan. Since that discussion, I have not seen the exact plan itself. It's sort of vague in some respects. There's no indication that Israel or Hamas will accept it, but everybody in the world is jumping on board with it. It came from the Trump administration, Jared Kushner, Tony Blair, and others. So I'm going to go through the 21 points because I think it's important that we see this. And I will admit up front, I am very troubled that our government is involved in this. This will not work. It's a disaster. All of these agreements have been disasters. The definition of insanity, many people have said throughout history, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Peace plans, two-state plans, solution plans have been presented to the Palestinian Authority on many occasions. They have all been rejected, and not only rejected, but they've led to intifadas. And there's a big call to globalize the intifada. By the way, while I'm speaking about this, I'm receiving reports on my phone of an active shooter at a church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Many victims. The church is also on fire. The roof is collapsing. At least this is the reports. It's a Mormon church. It's a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But that's irrelevant. It's in Grand Blanc, Michigan, sort of north of Detroit, a ways, maybe I don't know how far it is, an hour, 2 hours north of Detroit, Flint, Michigan, that area. So pray for those people, the victims, first responders. It's an active thing that's going on as we speak. So Trump brings these terrorism supporters to a meeting in New York to talk to them. You see Abdullah II there on the right, Trump, Erdogan, and the Emir of Qatar. I don't know how to explain why we're doing what we're doing. By the way, there's a huge article in the New York Times this morning, Peace and Profit Blur in the Middle East. Now, we can hate the New York Times. That's fine. But this is being reported multiple places about Witkoff, the main envoy from the Trump administration to the Middle East, his son, running around the Middle East, running around Qatar, making business deals and making a lot of money doing it. I have big problems with that. I question the ethics of it. I don't like it, and I think it clouds people's judgment. And there are things that Witkoff does in this, and it's like I can't explain why he's thinking that, or if he is thinking anything when he does these things. Same way with this guy named Tom Barak, who is the ambassador, I think he's the ambassador to Turkey and envoy to Lebanon and to Syria. I'm just saying I don't understand this guy. Every now and then he'll say something nice, but it's a very, very mixed bag. So here is the plan. This has been leaked. Times of Israel, Washington Post. I'll give you a little bit of context. Here's another picture of the meeting. And this is a plan that's developed by Tony Blair and Jared Kushner. As I said at the conference in Texas, Tony Blair's been around since I was using a blow dryer every day. I mean, that's how long ago. I know. I can see what? You used one ever? Yes, things deteriorate over time. And what was the line that George said in Seinfeld once? What you're looking for is the remnants of a great former civilization of hair. And it's losing. But Blair is all over this. He's never gone away. Just like Barack Obama has not gone away. He's still around. And if you remind me, I'll make a comment about the Comey indictment if I think of it. If not, I've got plenty of other things to talk about. So this was a plan that came out a few weeks, it's dribbled out over the last year and a half in different forms. One of these was the most recent one was this big PowerPoint, multiple megabytes, color photographs. And I want you to look at the terminology that's used here. It was called the Great Trust, from a demolished Iranian proxy to a prosperous Abrahamic ally. So they're tying in Abraham Accords, Abraham Shield, towards a new Abrahamic covenant, and what they're going to do. And down here, the GREAT stands for Gaza Reconstitution, Economic Acceleration, and Transformation. And they have maps. They have railways coming from Neom. And we'll talk some about Neom and New Babylon and that type of thing on Wednesday night. But they're talking 10 mega projects. They're going to have smart cities in Gaza. They're going to rebuild it. There are conceptual drawings. They're going to try to make it look like Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. That big, wonderful city. It's taken 30 some years to build. And they think they're going to build this thing quickly. There are going to be waterways and railroads and roads and big towers and beaches and resorts. And what do you see down here in the lower left-hand corner? Fields where things grow. There were fields like that back in 2005. There were high-tech greenhouses back in 2005 that were owned by Jews. And in 2005, every single Jew, living and dead, was kicked out of Gaza. Every single one. So the Gazan Arabs, they had their Jew-free state that they wanted. How's it gone? Saw a good meme the other day. It said, under Jerusalem, 3,000 years of Jewish history, including the pilgrimage road that's just opened. In a ceremony last week or week before. I don't even remember now. It's been recently, let's just put it this way. Under Gaza, 300 miles of terror tunnels. And this is why it's so difficult. People say, well, why are you doing that? Because you have to defeat the enemy. They're the ones who put people as human shields. They're the ones that are responsible. They're the ones who took hostages. And now they're saying that Israel has arrested people for terror attacks and that they have hostages too. Israel has hostages too. So all the language to talk about this has been completely perverted. So here's the Gaza plan.
Do you have a proposal or an idea?
By the way, so just listen a little bit. This is Jared Kushner earlier this year, or late last year at Harvard talking about Gaza.
Or a sketch for how we end this crisis?
Sure. So I think the dilemma that Israeli leadership has right now is, do you do a short-term deal that leaves you more vulnerable in the future, or do you take this current situation and try to figure out a way where you can create a paradigm where your citizens will be safe and this will not happen again? So it's a very, very tough dilemma to be faced with if you are the leader of a country. So what I would do right now if I was Israel is I would try to say, number one, you want to get as many civilians out of Rafah as possible. I think that you want to try to clear that out. I know that with diplomacy, maybe you get them into Egypt. I know that that's been refused, but with the right diplomacy, I think it would be possible. But in addition to that, the thing that I would try to do if I was Israel right now is I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. I know that won't be the popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do so that you can go in and finish the job. I think there was one decision point they had. Do we go into Gaza? Do we not go into Gaza? They had the hostages. There really was, I think, no choice but to do that. I think that they were smart to go slowly and deliberately. Gaza's booby-trapped like crazy. They have over 400 miles of underground tunnels. And so I think that they've taken some of the right steps in order to go there. But you have to, again, I think Israel's gone way more out of their way than a lot of other countries would to try to protect civilians from casualties. But I do think right now opening up the Negev, creating a secure area there, moving the civilians out, and then going in and finishing the job would be the right.
By the way, he mentions Egypt, so he goes on with his plan and he says, look, this is great for an entrepreneurial to go in and develop business and to take care of the problem, create economic opportunity, and everything's going to change. By the way, he's doing the same thing in Albania. He is all over the place. You need to pay attention to what he's doing. So here's, one of the pictures of Gaza, it looks like Dubai. Gardens, rooftop gardens, towers, beach, port, harbor, railways, all of these things. So here's the Gaza plan. As again, you can see it at Times of Israel or today's Washington Post, the 21 summaries. Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. Gaza will be, number two, Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of its people. These are, as you can see, they're kind of vague. And every one of them begs the question is like, oh yeah, how are you going to do that? De-radicalize. If both sides agree to the proposal, the war will immediately end with Israeli forces halting all operations and gradually withdrawing from the Strip. Within 48 hours of Israel publicly accepting the deal, all living and deceased hostages will be returned. It would have been nice if one person at the UN would have brought that up. I don't remember hearing it except from Benjamin Netanyahu and maybe one other country. Once the hostages are returned, Israel will free several hundred Palestinian security prisoners serving life sentences and over 1,000 Gazans arrested since the start of the war, along with the bodies of several hundred Palestinians. The numbers are really skewed one way on this, by the way. Once the hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence will be granted amnesty, while members who wish to leave the Strip will be granted safe passage to receiving countries. What is the consequence to Hamas? A lot of them had gone, the rich guys had gone to Doha, Qatar. That's why Israel bombed Doha, Qatar, and that operation was not as successful as everybody hoped. Once this agreement is reached, aid will surge into the Strip at rates no lower than the benchmark set in January 2025 hostage deal, which included 600 trucks of aid per day, along with the rehabilitation of critical infrastructure and the entry of equipment for removing rubble. Aid will be distributed without interference from either side by the United Nations and the Red Crescent, along with other international organizations not associated with either Israel or Hamas. By the way, it is so easy to go find videos of Hamas people publicly executing and shooting on the street Palestinian Gazans because they might have been suspected of collaborating with Israel. Just shoot them in cold blood right on the street. No trial, nothing. Just bring them out. And I've seen video after video of this. It's happening. By the way, they post them themselves. It's not like an Israeli operation. Gaza will be governed by a temporary transitional government of Palestinian technocrats. That's kind of an interesting language. We talk about this all the time. And this is their language, Palestinian technocrats who will be responsible for providing day-to-day services for the people of the Strip. That comes from the Abraham Shield Plan, and it also talks about the Strip will be a technocratic administration. So this thing with technology and all this stuff goes pretty wide. Probably won't get to it, by the way. In the UK, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, announced this week, if you want to work, you will need a digital ID. Now, somebody said, well, people are going to hire illegal people without digital IDs are going to do it anyway. What are you going to do about that? Well, we're going to convince them not to do it. Okay. Keir Starmer is, if you want the definition of technocrat and why technocracy is bad, go look at a picture of Keir Starmer and what he's doing to the UK. It's unbelievable. An economic plan will be created. This is part of the Gaza plan, will be created to rebuild Gaza through the convening of experts with experience in constructing modern Middle Eastern cities, and through the consideration of existing plans aimed at attracting investments and creating jobs. That sounds like it fell out of Jared Kushner's pocket, in my opinion. That's the way he talks. An economic zone will be established with reduced tariffs and access to rates to be negotiated by participating countries. By the way, this is an American Trump administration proposal that's being floated. They're meeting with the head of the United Arab Emirates because he's on board, because they want to protect the Abraham Accords. So I'm just telling you, people are buying into it. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, but those who choose to leave will be allowed to return. Moreover, Gazans will be encouraged to remain in the Strip and offered an opportunity to build a better future there. Hamas will have no role in Gaza's governance whatsoever, so we'll take care of Hamas. There will be a commitment to destroy and stop building any offensive military infrastructure, including tunnels. Gaza's new leaders will commit to peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. A security guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and other Gazan factions comply with their obligations. If you want to know the definition of pie in the sky, here it is. The U.S. will work with Arab and other international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force that will immediately deploy in Gaza to oversee security in the Strip. I think we've been down this road before. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza, and the IDF will gradually hand over territory it currently occupies as the replacement security forces establish control and stability in the Strip. If Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, the above points will proceed in terror-free areas, which the IDF will gradually hand over to the International Stabilization Force. Does this kind of ring Bible prophecy? Is this kind of ringing a bell in your head? Israel agrees not to carry out future strikes in Qatar. The U.S. and international community acknowledges Doha's important mediating role in the Gaza conflict. By mediating, you mean spewing out pro-Hamas propaganda, then okay, I'll agree with that statement. I don't understand this, okay? And people say, oh, Trump's doing, it's 4D chess. I don't want 4D chess. I want the war to end, but I want it to end with somebody victorious, not this slop that they're proposing here. A process will be established to de-radicalize the population. This will include an interfaith dialogue aimed at changing mindsets and narratives in Israel and Gaza. This is also comes out of the Abraham Shield. Moderate Arab countries will guide the Palestinian Authority in de-radicalization processes. Because why? Because they educate their kids like this in their schools all the time and have for decades and decades and decades. And promoting education for tolerance and coexistence. By the way, King Abdullah, got a thing for you. There's a great organization, I think it's based out of Sweden or Norway. It's called Impact-SE. Go look it up. impact-sc.org or .com. They have report after report after report. Here's a report released back in May of this year, falling short, review of Jordanian textbooks for 2024-2025. What did Impact SC find? The radicalization process of children is underway in the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. And this hypocrite gets in the well of the UN and says, oh, we want peace, we want coexistence. Baloney. Stop making us think you've changed when you haven't, and this goes on in your country. You hold people in refugee camps in your country, King Abdullah II. When Gaza's redevelopment is advanced and the PA reform program has been implemented, that's another pipe dream, Palestinian Authority reform. The conditions may be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian statehood, which is recognized as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. The clause doesn't provide details and is not definitive regarding when the pathway to statehood can be established. And finally, point 21, the U.S. will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful coexistence. A Twitter account I follow named Cheryl wrote it. She does a great job. And you can tell by the Israeli flag in her thing, she's pro-Israel, she's Jewish. The thing that stood out to me most about the 20, and I think this really kind of summarizes how I feel about this, stood out to me the most about the 21-point ceasefire proposal by the American administration is that just like the UK and France and Canada and Australia and all the other countries Trump criticized in his UN speech, the U.S. now officially and publicly also recognizes a Palestinian state of some kind. And all it took was a little finesse from none other than Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. I cannot disagree with that. I'm troubled by it, okay? And don't write to me that I hate Trump or anything. Listen, I want honesty, not a bunch of nonsense. And I think this is time when we've got to stand up to this. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to finish up with I've got a couple points to make. The anti-Semitism that fills up my X feed, and even on Facebook, even in Christian groups, anti-Israel. I don't like anti-Semitism. I think Jew hatred is a better term, is unbelievable. It is, it's crazy. And it's just not Tucker Carlson or Propagandist Owens or any of those people. They're involved in it. I mean, you're seeing it with regard to the killing of Charlie Kirk. The narrative is Israel killed Charlie Kirk because he was having some doubts about Israel. Now listen, I don't know how to say this in a kind way. If you look at the world and you believe that, you have a problem and you should stay off social media. You cannot analyze things. So Charlie had some questions, and supposedly Israel killed him. That's the allegation. Tucker Carlson, Propagandist Owens, and tons of other channels and accounts say much worse things, and they're still walking around saying it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, people in Georgia, please run somebody against her. Please get her out of public life. Let her go home, run her gym or whatever it is business she owns. She said, well, I just want everybody to know that I'm not suicidal. What's she saying? Because Israel's going to kill me because I'm criticizing Israel. That's what she's saying. By the way, she doesn't have the courage to come out and say that. She talks about how courageous she is. Tell us exactly what you're thinking, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Please spare us. So in New York, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he had a meeting. So a guy named Owen Schroyer, he had a meeting with influencers, pro-Zionist, pro-Israel people, some Christian, some college, some Jewish, whatever. Owen Schroyer is a big Jew hater. I don't think that's a slander. So Netanyahu said something. This was Owen Schroyer's interpretation. And Candace Owens did the same thing. This should outrage Americans. He wants to control speech online and aim weapons at us. Israel is losing the world because of its actions, so he censors it. Conservatives that spoke against this before but are silent now, frauds, cowards, or foreign agents. And I'm telling you, the narrative about Charlie Kirk, and this was an Israeli Mossad operation, that burst on the scene like all at once everywhere. And it was clearly, it's an Iranian, Russian, China propaganda operation. It is so clear and easy to see. But these people won't see it. So what did Netanyahu say that was so bad that Owen Schroyer said he wants to control speech, he wants to launch weapons against us? So here's part of the clip of the meeting. And so here's the AF Post Twitter account. Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu briefed American influencers on TikTok, calling the most important weapon in securing support for Israel on the right wing. Information. It is an information war. I've talked about this. This is an eighth war front for Israel. And by the way, it's unbelievable the number of accounts that spew this stuff, including so-called Christian pastors like Joel Webbin, who outright he's a Christian nationalist, Jew-hating pastor, and he'll deny that, but just look at the body of his work, and he'll say he will completely invert the reality of what happened at that meeting. So this post says, he went on to say, weapons change over time. The most important ones are the social media. We agree with that. We see it all the time. The most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. Netanyahu mentioned X and Elon Musk as well, saying Musk is not an enemy, he's a friend. We should talk to him. And so he was saying, go out and post, not forcing anybody, not paying anybody to go post things on social media. But how did Candace Owens? Oh, he's buying influence. She said this, he's buying TikTok, to use TikTok. Everybody should leave TikTok right now. Israel didn't buy TikTok. The United States government did. In a deal, you can read about it all over the place. So here's what Netanyahu said. Let him speak for himself.
Christian influencers. Okay. He said, we talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're the but they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community. They're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
Followers.
TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important?
X.
X. That's very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight, okay? Give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends or those who could be our Jewish our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpoint? Yes.
Okay, so first of all, did he say that Israel was purchasing TikTok? No. Did he say Israel wants to censor social media? No. He wants to get information out there on social media just like everybody else does. Ursula von der Leyen gave a big speech in the State of the Union in the EU talking about censoring social media. You know, but we all love her, right? It's crazy. So Dumasani Washington, who I've interviewed, he wrote a great article about a year and a half ago with a lady from Epic Times, and I can't remember her name, begins with an R, called The Arsonist. It was about Tucker Carlson in his recent interview of Munther Isaac. I interviewed Dumasani about this about 18 months ago. I hope to interview him soon. By the way, he's going to do a panel at Genesis 123 Foundation, like Genesis 12.3, Genesis 123 Foundation. Look it up. They're doing a webinar. I think it's noon on Tuesday, noon Eastern on Tuesday. You have to sign up for it. They won't inundate you with ads or anything like that. So look it up. If I could find a link to it, it may have a limit of number of people. It will be on Genesis 123 Foundation YouTube channel afterwards. But so Dumasani Washington, he posted this. He's talking about Muslim Brotherhood political analyst Salman Hadi praises Marjorie Taylor Greene. This guy is a Muslim Brotherhood guy. So he gets on and he praises Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens for their role in raising the causes of Israel hatred or anti-Zionism on the right. Because we decided to do this instead of sleeping, Trump spared the Iranian regime. You shifted an entire U.S. foreign policy. It was a 12-day war, but it didn't finish the job. It helped. But here, listen to what the guy says.
That we're seeing now right-wing bases. Who would have thought that Tucker Carlson, of all people, would sit there and be the #1 advocate against Zionism in America today? Candace Owens, did you guys see the Ted Cruz interview where Tucker Carlson rips into Ted Cruz and just completely destroys him? Matt Walsh likewise, and there's a huge Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sean King said to me when we were in the car once, he said, Sammy, you don't understand who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She's the representative of the most racist area in Georgia. African Americans were told not to go to her area. She's now one of the loudest advocates against Zionism. But here's my point about the Ummah when you said that we've done everything we can. Why has that change taken place? Because we've started to deploy a power that we haven't maxed out yet. Trump is looking at Tucker Carlson, who's saying we shouldn't get involved. Candace Owens, we shouldn't get involved. Matt Walsh, we shouldn't get involved. Dave Smith, Trump needs to be impeached if he goes into Iran. So Donald Trump, because of that scream, because of you here in Kuala Lumpur, because of us in London, because of those in Berlin, in Rome, because we actually decided to speak about it, because it became relevant, because we decided to tweet about it, because we decided to because we decided to do da'wah at last instead of sleeping, what happened was Trump instead went to the Iranians and said to them, listen, I need a way out. I'm going to send 2 bombers. They're going to bomb, but what did Israel say? These 3 sides. Your scream, your voice, it has power. It shifted an entire U.S. foreign policy. It stopped Trump from intervening in Iran itself. And this is the whole point. When people say, why come to Kuala Lumpur? Why go to these places? It's because the power is not there like you think it is. The power is here. We are achieving results. They said that when Trump comes to power, it will be disastrous, like for Muslims in America. Mahmoud Khalil, arrested, released. Rumaysat Oztur, arrested, released. Mohsen Mahdawi, arrested, released. American Muslims from Palestine, tried in Michigan, the case was dropped. Tried in Nevada, the case was dropped. They tried to pass the anti-boycott bill, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she pulled it. They tried to do a non-profit killer bill where the Attorney General would have the unilateral right to remove a tax-exempt status. Guess who removed that clause from the bill? Christian churches who said, why is Zionism intervening in terms of how we decide our non-profit? The reality is that people are making an effort and it's working.
And I can't say I disagree with him. I mean, I think he overstates a few things, but that's the reality. I did play stuff from the something for Palestine that took place up in Michigan a few weeks ago. I played some of those clips, didn't I? I think I did. The people, yeah, I remember that. I know I played them, but I'm just telling you, this is all happening right in front of us. A guy who is a radical communist Muslim is likely to become the mayor of New York. And what did he say? Netanyahu comes to New York and I'm mayor, I'm going to arrest him. You got to see the route that Netanyahu flew from Israel to New York for the UN meetings. He had to fly like down the Mediterranean through the Strait of Gibraltar, wouldn't fly over France, wouldn't fly over Spain. And he did that for symbolic reasons, but he also did, what if there was plane trouble and he lands in the UK, they're going to arrest him. I don't think we understand the world that we live in right now. So when I was in Dallas, I met with some people who live locally who are very concerned about Muslim intrusion into the Dallas and Houston areas. They're building giant mosques, strategic mosques. I have reports from security people say they look like they're designed to withstand the assault of a SWAT team. They're like a small fortress. They're building them around here. One report I got, and so look, I'm not sure if it's not entirely verified, but I trust the guy that told me. They've almost bought all the property around Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. They're setting up madrasas in Houston, in Dallas. We will educate your child till the age of 18. The only thing you have to do in return is when the child finishes school, they have to spend 2 years in politics, dedicated to politics. Why are they doing that? They want to take over. This is not some theoretical thing. And what happens this week? Tucker Carlson releases his 9/11 movie, The Jews Did It. The Jews did it because they wanted to force us to go to war in Iraq. Listen, people involved in that, like David Wormser, who were at the White House in those meetings, in those security meetings and decisions, said that never happened. He made it all up. He lied. It's propaganda. I am just shocked. And so when I see this, so when Netanyahu says that, everybody says he wants to control media, he wants to buy up social media, he wants to get everybody off, he wants to control everything, and that's the narrative. And the narrative is Israel controls the U.S. I don't think so. We have better traffic than Israel, for one thing. And, well, I'd probably not make the other comment that I want to make. But so listen, you need to be aware of this. I'll finish up with this. What's Putin going to do? Because he's talking about moving into Europe, threatening nuclear war. There's a big meeting that Pete Hegseth is having with a lot of naval and Army people in D.C. or in Quantico, Virginia. Now, he says it's to rally the troops. Other people say we're preparing for nuclear war with Russia. So we'll see. Look, if nuclear war is coming, they're going to get us, right? I mean, I don't have a missile defense system at the house. So, and I know where I'm going anyway if something happens. I don't like it, but I mean, Putin's been threatening this off and on for a lot of years. Maybe this time he'll do something about it. I don't know. This also report, America is losing the ability to deter China. This is a report in the Wall Street Journal the other day. Beijing is relentlessly building its military as its leaders issue ominous threats against Taiwan. And you have the Taiwan Straits. And you have this report how Russia is helping China prepare to seize Taiwan. This came from a UK report. And I think there's a link in the notes below this video, and you can watch that. I don't know if it's going to happen. This is what the article says. The capacity to airdrop armored vehicles on golf courses or other areas of open and firm ground near Taiwan's ports and airfields would allow air assault troops to significantly increase their combat power and threaten seizure of those facilities to a clear path for the landing of follow-on forces. And everybody's upset with Trump. He says, well, I think Ukraine can take back what they lost. And all the people everywhere, right-wing media, oh, Trump's taking us to nuclear war and all that stuff. I don't know. It's possible. Okay. I don't think Russia's done particularly well in Ukraine. Somebody did a statistical analysis. If Russia continued to advance at the rate they've advanced in Ukraine for the last 3.5 years, they would take over Kyiv by 21-25. And maybe that's why Putin thinks he wants to live 150 years, because he wants to be around when they finally declare victory or final takeover. There's a lot of components moving there, and I talked about that. The religious, imperialistic tendencies of Putin and everything. So anyway, a lot going on. And that, by the way, that's China coast. That's the Philippines in the bottom, and that's Taiwan in the middle, about 100 miles off the Chinese coast. So whether they'll try an amphibious landing on that, I don't know. They've got things they've built for it, but there's a lot of missiles and drones and that type of thing that didn't exist back in those days, and I don't know exactly the total capabilities of Taiwan, but I know they're preparing for it, so we'll see. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on. Pay attention, and Technocracy Roundtable on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if I have other things I do, I'll post them on social media. Okay, let's pray. Lord, thanks for your word. Lord, pray you'll give us strength to stand in this day, even though the news is troubling. But we know that you fill us with the power of your Holy Spirit to be able to stand up for truth and the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ. Give us opportunities to share that with those around us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.